give it a couple here to validate that we are in fact live on Twitch. So hopefully they'll start to flow in here soon, and we'll be able to validate. And once that happens, I will bring in David and get the show on the road. Okay, nobody yet, but there's no event for them to advertise. They're gonna have to just kind of refresh, I guess. Petar, he has found us. Okay, good. So we're good. We're in like Flynn. All right, good. Thanks for the heads up, by the way. Awesome. Okay, so today we have a new guest. It's we've kind of had a trend of like kind of a tornado or an avalanche of DreamWorks directors in the house lately, which has been awesome. And now we're mixing it up today and going a bit more in the realm of video game animation, which is obviously near and dear in my heart. Not that this particular person is only lived in that industry, just that I think one of the things he's probably most known for is something related to the video game industry. We'll get into that. His name is Dan Root. He is from England, and which you will be able to tell by his amazing accent. I'm a bit of an accent aficionado, as you all know. I really enjoy people with accents. I don't know why, I just do. And accents are kind of funny in the sense that it's just something relative to what you're used to. But he is a veteran animator. He's worked in a lot of different industries. And I think the reason why he showed up on our radar is because, like so many other people we've had on our show, he has tirelessly thrown himself into the world of YouTube and is building amazing content on his channel called Video Game Animation Study. You may know of it. He's got a good number of subscribers, well over 100,000, which is quite an accomplishment considering such a niche area of interest. So people like JD and people like Sir Wade, he's just another one of these amazing angels that have just been sent to us to just share information and doing it in a way that's very consumable. So I'm very excited to have him on today. I'm going to bring in David as my official man in my wingman, I guess. Hello, David.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. This week it seems that it's we must have jinxed ourselves. Probably a week or two ago, say, oh, that's no major tech
seems
issues,
super smooth, right?
Too easy, and then boom.
So who thought it? That's the question. Whoever thought that jinxed us. It wasn't me.
Never
David.
Get too comfortable. That's the lesson here.
By the way, I have a new shirt that I bought this specifically for you. It took him a second. David busts my balls on a regular because I'm terrible at Slack. I'm terrible at it.
You're terrible at notifying all those notifications that appear.
I'm not very good at doing the whack-a-mole game right here. I'm trying to do this. If David wished I was better at that right there, getting rid of that dot. It's so funny.
My God.
Yes.
This t-shirt 10 years ago would mean nothing.
Nothing. But now it means so friggin' much.
It's everything. It means that someone somewhere is waiting for you. This is what it means.
That's what it means. It's like this right here is an icon of my stress right here, right there. That is called undue burden. Okay, well, without further ado, let's bring in Dan now that I've made this whole conversation go off the rails as I usually do. Dan Root, how are you, sir?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for the compliments on the accent as well. That's very kind. I don't think I've ever been complimented on my accent before. So,
well,
when you say aficionado, do you recognize counties in other countries?
No. I think maybe more of a connoisseur. I really just one of my favorite games. I do a lot of teaching online, and so I'm blessed with having students in my classroom from all over the world all the time. And one of my favorite things is to try to figure out where they're from. And I'm getting better at it because I'm getting more and more exposed to
is it like a hand on the chin, sort of like a stare? It's like, where are you from? Or is it?
Yeah. I'm sure they all really appreciate being under my microscope. They're like, it's just a language, dude. It's just an accent. Just get over it. But yeah,
it's good. Oh, thanks very much.
So, Brett, I'm curious. Is there some cues like with the background that they might have, the equality of internet connection? Is there other cues other than the accent?
Dude, yes. Like, how about one thing that I learned to pick up on over time is power outlets.
Oh, so you spot the power outlets shape in the background.
Oh yeah, if I can, that gives me huge clues. You'd be surprised. Also, just like the actual what the wall's made out of. I find that like a lot of European countries are really big on still the stucco kind of style wall, as opposed to like sort of like typical drywall gypsum that they put in the North America walls. The older buildings in North America still have that, but there's a good chance that even modern buildings in some cases in Europe have the. Anyways, yes. I'm the Sherlock Holmes of accents, and I'm going to find out where you're from.
This was England from the funny Dowdo rail thing here. Do you have these in America?
That wouldn't have really suggested anything super strong to me. Yeah, your room is particularly tricky because it's like like we're talking about this offline, but you've got a section off a part of your room for this
I'm very cramped
exactly.
in.
So it's like you've protected. You're playing a very close poker game with your cards close to your chest. So I would have had, but your accent gave away. So
yeah.
So welcome to the show. I'm super happy to have you here. It's going to be super cool to get to know, especially because David and I both don't know you very well. So I think it's really cool for us to get to know you as well. So it's awesome.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks for reaching out. It's it's a really good idea. Just nice conversation, relaxed thing.
Let's do it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we discussed before this stream. It's bring all kind of guests from a different area and have a little bit of the human aspect of what they're doing and why they decide to do what they do, and have some of the more human perspective on a very different profile in the industry. So I would just start about for some of the folks out there that don't know about you, and let's just try to keep it brief, but just a brief overview of your background to give just a little bit better perspective for the rest of the conversation we'll have afterwards.
Well, I am Dan. I am a 2D animator primarily. I kind of dabble in a lot of varying aspects of animation. So I do a lot of frame-by-frame hand-drawn stuff, kind of on screens, and that kind of spans into small cartoons, into some visual effects for small indie games. I also teach animation as well, so I kind of do a lot of frame-by-frame teaching at my university. I also do motion graphics, but my thing that I think is got your guys' attention was my YouTube channel, which talks about video game animations. I've been doing that for a few years because it's just really interesting to me.
Yeah. One thing, all right, well, let's dive right in. I would say one of the things that I felt that was super interesting, and there's first, where is this interest for 8 bits and 16 bits animation coming from? And it's not just that, there's definitely something, the aesthetic from the 80s, just in the introduction of the videos, and even your showreel. I mean, it's one of the best showreel introduction that I've seen.
It is pretty awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Guys, if you want to look it up, just anyway, you know how to.
Actually, A to the J just linked one of his video playlists, I think, in chat. If you're just curious, you can click right on it.
Yeah, good. But so where is this coming from? Because it's pretty specific and it's pretty well done. I would say it's very well studied to be able to kind of do this kind of homage to the 80s like this.
Thanks. Well, I mean, I think we all have this kind of nostalgia in us, for when we were younger. And I grew up, I was born in 1985, so my youth was sort of late 80s, early 90s. And I think just the things that make that impression on you when you're young, they just kind of stick with you. So if you find a passion there, then it's likely just to kind of just feed through in everything else you do. So I think it wasn't my fault. I was just super into 8-bit and 60-bit games. It just happened.
Not your fault.
Yeah. So it's
you're a victim. You're a victim of the story.
Yeah, exactly. I can't help it. It's just so I find that's kind of where that comes from, because my older brothers, they were the ones who had video games. They would borrow them off friends and everything. And this is in the 80s, so people just borrowed games off people, and you talked about games in the playground. And so Mega Man was like one of the first games I remember playing, and just
that was so tough.
Love story. So
such a tough game, especially the first one. The first two is I replayed it a couple of years ago just for fun. Like, wow, game were tough in the taste.
But we still managed it. Like, I'd spend a whole Sunday, trying to figure it out, and then I'd be like, yes, I did it. And it's weird, just kids have this different level of, commitment to some things, especially like interactive media. But
Well, it definitely felt precious. I remember the days. I don't know if your first console was a NES or a Super Nintendo, but for the NES, I have distinct memories of going to the equivalent of what was a Blockbuster, rent the console for a weekend. You bring back with this kind of suitcase that is the most precious thing for you, and you have 48 hours of play. And that's probably going to be the only 48 hours of the month that you're going to have. And then you had the Link, like a golden cassette that was coming from it. It was a Mega Man, the Metroid, the Mario Brothers. And it was just 48 hours until the very end. So it really felt precious at that time. That's for sure.
They really tried to pack in an experience back then, I think. It's funny when you said about the golden cartridge for Link. I know it's like Nintendo haven't gone back to that. Like they haven't released a golden Switch cartridge for anything. It's like they could do that. Nintendo are kind of a toy company at heart. They could definitely promote that somehow. But
it was just a perfect marketing coup. It worked perfectly. So which game would you say were the first? You mentioned Mega Man. Is there others that had a not necessarily an influence, but the first one that you remember that gave you this passion for a game and maybe even animation in general?
Yeah, I think it was kind of the ones you often see. They're almost like kind of cliche choices, because it was Super Mario Bros. 3, like Mega Man 2, the Super Metroid, all these kind of just these trailblazers of their time, these ones that just, they made such an impact that it had an influence on the designers today, and that's where you see all these references and everything. So sometimes I feel like am I just kind of the same as everyone else enjoying these things, but like no, they were that good. That's why people enjoy them so much. But so there was, I'm trying to think like if there was a particular game. I don't think I really noticed kind of the importance of video game animation properly until sort of maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, like when it started to become more sophisticated. So things like Tomb Raider, and I particularly remember a game called Nightmare Creatures on the PS1. I was just kind of noticing a bit more, sort of, back then you didn't really notice it, but when you'd like change position, like snap from one motion to another, and there's something always twigged there.
For me, it was Prince of Persia. That was the game that was like, that's interesting. Like suddenly, like animations became part of the game in a big way, right?
Yeah, flashback actually. Thinking now you've mentioned that, I remember that thinking like, this is real life. Like, look at it. That's how we
remember there was an old game I used to play. I originally started on a PC before I even got into like NES, and I played on there was an old system called a Commodore 64, and there was a game called Impossible Mission. And this game, in many ways, felt like a predecessor to Prince of Persia because it also had a sort of certain flow to the animations, a much more realistic look. I'm sure if we went back in time and looked at it now, we'd be like, oh, how did I think that looked real? But at the time, it really, really was.
Yeah, that's
a huge step.
It's funny because, when people say, like, oh, it's, dated so much, but and you say it was good for that time, but you need these stepping stones, these like milestones to keep knocking down, to make progression. So it's I agree. It's funny when you said Impossible Mission, I was like, I've heard that game before, and I was like, I researched it for one of my videos, like not for any particular depth, but just like it's enough to.
Scott in chat, by the way, your stock went up, buddy. The fact that you even can pull out some of the actual classic, because this was one of the first games that used digitalized audio as well, so it had like real voices, but it was all garbled, and it was because it was like MIDI synthesized. It wasn't an actual audio like wave recording. It was something trying to sound like a real person's voice.
That's something I always find really kind of underrated, or personally, as I get older, I think back to sort of the brick smashing sound effect in Super Mario Brothers. I'm just like, that sounds like a brick smashing. Like, how do they even do that? That's audio design is just. I know. It's completely out of my brain. Like, I can't even imagine how they do it. But
it's funny you mentioned how these sort of 8-bit and sort of 16-bit like old school graphics had such a charm, and there was it was a kind of a secret sauce. I've often connected and related or correlated the same kind of connection people have in 3D these days. They sort of yearn for the yesteryears of 2D animation in the charm and the sort of the lo-fi look and feel and texture that it had. I feel like 8-bit and like 16-bit are also sort of regarded in the same sort of nostalgic specific way. It's not just nostalgia though. It's like there's a certain sort of visual language of simplicity that comes along with these types of games. If it wasn't hot, if it didn't still resonate, then people wouldn't still be emulating it. You have a lot of indie game companies are still trying to make intentionally games that still look like they were made in the 80s, which is interesting in itself.
Yeah, like they're not trying to cash in on a particular like craze or anything that's starting to come around again. It's like it's actually there inside them. Like they can feel it. They feel there's this thing with it. I mean, absolutely. I know it gets thrown around a lot nowadays about the whole limitations kind of breed creativity. I've heard that saying been said quite a few times now, but I probably believe it. I think especially in the early days of video game design, like they didn't have. Well, I'm trying to think of how small a space they had to work with, like especially on NES cartridges. Like it's like less than a Word document would be today, and it's like ridiculous. How do they do that? Like tile mapping and tile patterns.
So spoiled now. We're so spoiled. Yeah. It's like what the heck? Like how? Like the fact that we have a hard time with fitting it all on a disc back then. Now it's not even hardly even discs these days. It's like most of it's migrating over to just direct downloads and just dropping it on these terabyte storages on our directly on our either computers or on our consoles, and it's like we complain as developers. It's like not enough space.
I mean, I've just finished Metroid Dread actually the other day.
Oh yeah, how'd you like that?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's just
I've been wanting to pick that one up. I really want to play that.
Yeah, it's just so clean looking, like it's amazing, and the animations are superb. But I keep forgetting, like it's on a tiny little thing about this big. Like it's still, it's crazy just how they. Like
I would say there's some of this stuff that when I played, or the memory that I played, I never paid attention of how much they could do with so little. And it's actually some of your videos, especially on, I think the Mega Man was the first one that you show all those different poses, and literally it's like 19 or 20 poses, and all of those are combined in different way to make you feel
like there's probably only about like 3 complete images of Mega Man. They're just all swapping out bits, and it's like not only did I have to think about the animation of what they were doing, they had to think about how to make it work, and it's like it's kind of jumping forward a little bit and sort of related. I remember I went to a presentation with Dr. David Doak, who worked on Goldeneye for Rare.
Oh yeah,
and he was talking about how Goldeneye 64 was made and everything, and I happened to obviously ask him. I was like, oh, how were the animations done? And they didn't have a dedicated animator in the studio for that, so they kind of just had to sort of budget themselves. And it's just like crazy to think, back in that day as well, for the 8-bit stuff, they probably would have had to have been the animators and the coders and do a lot of other work. So just keeping all that in your head, I think back then would have been just even more stressful. It just makes me have more respect for that art form. And again, like you say, I think that's where that desire to kind of recreate it comes from. You want to give yourself those limitations.
It's like it's like exactly those limitations, because as all creators know, that constraints are essentially the birthplace of innovation. Like you will always be more creative when you're forced to do something with so little. It's like, oh well, that's a problem I need to solve, rather than just giving all the resources in the world. It's like you're paralyzed with indecision because you don't even know where to start. But if you're backed into a corner and you have like a toothpick to escape from this sort of metal prison, you're gonna come up with some pretty crazy ideas. So that was the sort of joy behind MacGyver. This whole conversation is becoming very 80s. It's like completely ostracizing most of the people that were born, anywhere after like 1990.
It's funny. For my lectures I've been doing recently, we're doing a little bit of kind of storyboarding, but we're kind of doing that around Photoshop. So we're talking about how to kind of make a composition image and everything. And I happen to use an example of the ship from Flight of the Navigator as like something to cut out and put into like a background. And I don't know why I said it. I was like, 100 points to whoever knows what that's from. They're like, it's just a circle. Crickets. I don't. I was like, oh no.
Oh man, I'm so old.
So would you say that did you maybe going to the creation of the channel, did you had in mind this influence of the 8-bit, 16-bits, and 80s while creating the channel, or it was more like, oh, I want to, share my thoughts on animation, and just naturally it led toward this direction?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of both of those. Like I was really inspired by Game Maker's Toolkit and Mark Brown, and I don't know if you know that. Just like the effort that he puts into the production of the videos, because I kind of found his channel about 2015, And I'd been tinkering with videos around then, and I was like, no, yeah, I'm going to put in some real effort. And it didn't really start off as animation at first. I kind of was talking about Super Metroid, but I decided to buy an Elgato capture card to get all the right capture, and I put some motion graphics in, did a little bit of animation, like character animation for like a little host and everything. And then as I started making a few more of these videos, I realized, because the reason that Mark Brown started doing Game Maker's Toolkit, because he couldn't find any of the videos or content he wanted to watch on YouTube, particularly about game design. So he kind of made it himself. And I think that's kind of where the little spark kind of started twitching in my head. I was playing Dust Force in maybe 2015, 2016. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's like a little 2D platformer, but it's just, it's really nicely animated. And just, it suddenly clicked. I was like, oh, I could talk about animation in video games. And like, that's a really good idea. And at first it started off as just kind of talking about animation in video games, just kind of get my feet in the water and figure out, like, okay, so I can't just keep saying this looks nice. And like, as I was kind of researching about video game animation, like how animation works in video games, I suddenly started learning more about it. And then I thought, like, well, it's like a self-feeding thing. Like, the more I researched about it, then I could teach it and like tell other people about it. So yeah, it kind of just sort of not like created itself, but there was definitely a kind of feedback loop there that kind of helped direct the channel's direction.
I have a related question about this. So something that I often find myself doing a lot of is evangelizing to a lot of animators, a lot of would-be game animators, you know, like trying to explain them what specific things they need to be aware of, like what's different about animating for games, you know, like and so I'm curious, in your mind, after all the studying you've done and you know, on this topic, if you had like a top 5 or maybe even just top 3 sort of main standout things that you think that any animator who wants to get into game animation should need to know, what would those things be in your mind?
I think as I started researching it, there's the main thing I believe, like it could be number 2, but I think number 1 in games is what's called feel. So how a game feels to play should always be the main thing you aim for. So you want a game to feel good to play. So the animation technically is secondary to that. So if the animation gets in the way of how the game feels, then that'll become detrimental to your game overall. So something I realized as I was kind of researching this is that 2D game animation is harder to make more versatile animation for in games, especially with the advent of 3D animation. So things like Unity and Unreal, you can have, it's kind of difficult to explain, but you can have like almost like a gradient of animations which can apply to specific parts of the body.
Blends, yeah.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah, so like, you know, if you're a third-person character and you're holding a gun, you know, your legs will be animating, but you don't have to animate that at the same time as holding a gun. So
because layers and blends, essentially, like you have you rather than like where a 2D animation, it's like you can't really do that, especially not easily, anyways.
No, I mean, I think there are is it Hades by Supergiant? I think, is that actually 3D, but just it's so 3D. Stylized, it kind of has so I've actually played it, I've just seen trailers, but
it's very good. It's worth playing for sure.
I mean,
the hype is real, and I avoided it for a long time, and I started playing it a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, wow, this game is very, very engaging.
Well, I have a friend who just knows the sort of stuff I like. He knows I'm really into like visual effects, and it's like, oh look, you'll like this. Have a look at this, and I was like, oh yeah, that's good. So it's just I'm waiting for it to come into sale at the moment because I've got so many games I need to play, and I'm kind of just watching it.
I know,
not to you know. So I think 2D, so things like Cuphead, you know, recently it's just mind-blowing to think that's all done on paper. And they've had to kind of think about even things like Hollow Knight as well. Thinking about how the way 2D animation works in video games is much trickier because you have the like transitioning frames. So if you're running and your character stops and then they turn, like, do you have to animate the turn, or do you kind of just work out some weird little in-between frame that kind of averages out where you might be, because you can't animate every transition from one frame to the other because you could be in one frame or another. So I think that's something to be aware of if an animator was to go into game animation, is that it's not linear animation anymore. It's kind of cycles, loops, and transitions, and you have to think about how they all flow into each other
Yep.
to make it look nice. I think that's those are like the main things. I'm not sure if they're listable as a thing, but
I'm glad you opened with the idea of feel. I mean, because something I always tell people is if you really want to learn game animation, you really can't do that unless you're also trying to get your animations into a game, because otherwise you won't be able to get a feel for the animation you just made. It's like you're missing that sensory input that will be crucial as to the success or complete failure of what you just made. It doesn't matter that it looks good on screen in a demo reel, because unless it actually performs properly and feels good in the hands of a controller being driven by a player, then it's worthless. And you need to get that. It's like where a normal animator would just sort of use a play blast as their main feedback loop of just looking at something and being like yes or no. You need it in game, and you need to be viewing that interactively. Otherwise you're just missing a whole. It's like trying to judge your own animation without any eyes. It's like how do you do that?
That's it. Yeah, it's a tough old job. Like I kind of touched upon this in one of my videos that's done particularly well, about keyframes in 16-bit animation. I think that's probably like the one that's kind of defined the channel at the time. But it's like when you start animating, particularly in 2D, and I guess in 3D as well, like you could probably block out some motions, but you tend to start with keyframes, as you probably would, to kind of rough out the motion. And you probably do that in games as well. So, if you're going to jump, you're not going to worry about all the in-between straight away. You're going to have like a really rough run cycle, and then you'll have maybe the jump pose. And then you kind of, like you say, then you'll play test that, get a feel for it. You're like, okay, that feels good. Then we'll kind of work in animations around that, like in-betweens. And I think that's kind of why Hollow Knight feels so good, because you jump, there's no real jumping animation. It's just, it's in the air, and then there's the particle effects and everything are kind of filling in the gap there. And again, I think this is why things like Mega Man and the old 8-bit games felt good, is because they were still using keyframes essentially, but they just didn't have the memory space to fill in betweens. So
they were just having like holding a pose, like there was like an action pose in the air, and it was just what caused the character to go up and down was just essentially some sort of faux physics that was just driving the character's sort of sprite around. There's some, I saw the trailer for the new Kirby game coming out next year, Lost Kingdom or something, or Lost City. And I noticed what they've done is, because Kirby's so squishy, when he lands from a jump, he'll kind of squish down. But when he jumps just straight from standing still, it's just like up, but in a ball. But they've combined that follow through of the bounce. When you jump again, he'll bounce out of that squashed shape. So that's kind of almost acting as anticipation as well. So they're kind of like clipping a bit of an end of an animation, putting it on the beginning of another. So it's this clever. Is exactly it. I find that there's a lot of that going on in games, because anticipations are difficult to put in, because anticipations would typically introduce a sort of latency to the control.
They're for bosses.
That's it. Players, when they hit that button to jump, they want to be up in the air. They don't want to be going down before, and so it's hard, because visually that can have an effect. So animators are always trying to find a way of thinking outside the box, and like to ninja our brains and a feeling like that anticipation was there, but they have to find a way of making it feel like it was there in another way, rather than it actually being there in a traditional sense, right? And that's part of animation for a game, is that there's so much pioneering left to still do, and that's what I find is exciting about it. Is like trying to it's not just there's one way forward. There's like literally many ways forward, and many ways that we haven't even discovered yet on how to get to the bottom of that particular problem.
And sorry, go on, David.
No, I just wanted to bring back that you mentioned Hollow Knight, and for me, again, it's when looking at your analysis that I realized that, oh my God, there's not a lot of animation there, and there's a lot of VFX there that kind of sell what the animation, and your brain doesn't any feel like there was anticipation and all that, but no, it's not there. It's just the sound and the visual effects that does the job, and that's pretty creative and impressive when you look frame by frame what they did to trick the brain this way.
Totally.
And I think that's the other thing as well, is kind of pipeline the workflow of being in a game studio, whether that's a small indie studio or a slightly bigger one. I think it's really important for animators, everyone, to communicate and kind of work out what needs to do what. At what time. And I think this is, like you were saying, Brent, about what sort of pioneering is left to do. And I think like something I noticed with Metroid Dread is that it's all tight and clean, and it all just runs really fast, which makes you think that it must be some real efficiency going on in the background and the engine and the coding and stuff. And I think that's kind of something that is still happening in a lot of games. It's the like the efficiency of everything. What is it? The elegance of how it's all tied together. Like, is it worth having an entire animation for a particular thing, or can you reuse something else and keep it all tighter? And,
yeah, that's the biggest challenge with big AAA production, that you have a lot of people in a lot of department with a lot of managers to try to. It's the more people you have, the more difficult it becomes to work hand in hand with everyone. That there's what is the solution for all of those problems? Well, sometimes it involves like, I need to talk to this person and this person and this person, and together we find the solution. I was curious to ask, because we've discussed very briefly about some of the videos. How do you come up with the inspiration to work on those different videos? Is it just random? You play something like, "Ooh, that would make a good video," or is it more like, "Okay, I need to make a video. What is it going to be? How's it?" What's the process?
It's a bit of both. Sometimes, like recently, it's been a while since I've made a video since recently, because I've just been busy with teaching and freelance animation and everything. And I just fancied a bit of a break.
Yeah, a week ago, you slacker.
Yeah. But then before that, it was like January, so I was like, bit of a gap. But recently I've just been playing Mario Kart 8 with my daughters, and I was just like, this is awesome. And I was just thinking about all the little bits that happen. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do a quick video on this. And I thought, did a bit more research and kind of, thought about how I could explain it in a bit more of an educational way as well. I think that's kind of the angle I'm going to try and fit into any videos I kind of do, is just a way that I kind of explain something that someone might be able to understand and be like, oh, that's that's interesting.
Do you feel that those video goes hand in hand with the teaching, the education that you're doing, or they're like two different things in your mind? And you could do one or the other, and it would make a difference.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both sometimes as well. So sometimes, how I'm teaching can help inform how I structure a video if I've got a particular idea. And then sometimes I just will fancy just doing something because I think people might like this. I did one about Echo the Dolphin at the beginning of the year. Like, I didn't do too well, but sometimes I like just doing it for me. Like, I like knowing that I've done the video about Echo the Dolphin, and it's like, that was interesting to me at least. And some people find it interesting as well. But it's a bit of both sometimes. But I think the teaching, they've both kind of informed each other. Like, how I structure a video to teach people who know nothing about animation or game animations, kind of maybe think about how I talk about things I know to people who don't. So that's kind of helped my teaching, and the other way around.
Yeah, that's the thing with teaching. It's not just about giving, although it can be a big part of it, but it's also that just for being able to teach, you need to synthesize and understand the process enough to be able to easily verbalize it. So, and the more easy it is to you for verbalize it, the more you understand it. But to understand it properly, you need to do your research. So there's a lot of work that goes into teaching itself, and that helps you as an animator. That's for sure.
Yeah, you have to be very sort of concise, and because when you're not teaching and you're an animator, sometimes animation is you can hold it in your head quite a lot, especially if you're you get into a zone, and if you're roughing out animations or researching or style framing or something, it's sometimes you just can feel kind of what you want to do, and you know how to do it. So trying to get that out of your brain into words for people to understand is it's an interesting challenge, but a satisfying one.
Yeah, that's something that we've discussed recently, whether it's with supervisors or teacher. If you're teaching kids and you just tell them, just do more appealing poses, just put more weight in your animation, just have a more interesting performance. That has absolutely like zero value for someone that is starting, because they might not even know what you're talking about. So you need to break it down and explain what.
Just do better. It's not helpful.
Do better and faster. But when I was looking at your video, I was like, my God, just the work that goes into analyzing all of this might be super helpful for the teaching, for the video obviously, but then for the teaching and even your own craft of animation.
How long does it take for you to put those together, by the way? Because some like it's very clear, like the extra time and like the graphics and all the things that you need to do to help make a point in a video that needs that kind of precision. Like how long does it usually take production value on average? Like, because a lot of your videos they hover around the 10-minute mark, I find. You know, like it's usually it looks like you're trying to stay under 10 often.
I think,
so
I think it depends. Like the Mega Man one is like an hour long, and I just like, no, I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, good point.
It's gonna be an hour long, and I'm gonna commit to it. I'm gonna research it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna record, all the footage. It took. I was doing that one for maybe 2 or 3 months, sort of in the evenings and weekends.
Right.
But the Mario Kart one was done sort of within a couple of weeks. I got the footage because sometimes I kind of think about kind of what I want to structure the videos, like when I'm falling asleep or doing something mundane. I'll kind of sort of go over how I want the video to kind of play out, and then I'll start writing a script. I'll kind of make some like bullet points.
So meaning like the sort of the overarching sort of narrative.
Yeah. Kind of so I'll kind of think about like, I'll talk about things, and then often sometimes forget to write it down. So like, what was I thinking? But I'm interested to make a video about Metroid Dread. So I'm kind of in the process of figuring out,
right?
Because I don't like doing the same thing all the time is my other problem. Like I like to keep things kind of fresh and interesting, which is why I've got 100 different video intros every year. I like to kind of try new formats out to kind of keep it entertaining. Because while I'm an animator and I'm sort of trying to teach my videos, it is also YouTube, and I think sometimes you kind of have to stay on trend and sort of be savvy to what people want to watch. Otherwise you don't get that natural, organic algorithm kind of feed from YouTube. If people don't click in that first 10 minutes, then YouTube won't feed it out to other people to watch, and the channel can't really grow. So it's so it's not like, I wouldn't say I'm in a crisis point, but it's get to a point where I'm quite big, over 100,000 subscribers, like that. But it's also like it's trying to find more time to keep that flow going, and it's and there's lots of different varying aspects to how what makes your video get sent out to other people to go and view and everything. So it's it's quite stressful trying to balance all these things.
So I've heard it's like once you get a certain amount, it's like the first stress is just getting a followership or like sort of a viewership, and then the viewership itself becomes the stress, because it's like, well, now there's momentum. You feel like if you don't keep up, then you're going to lose that viewership that you've already worked really hard for.
One.
Yeah. So
So is it to a point for you, Dan, that you could foresee that? Well, first of all, obviously not discussing number, but is there some monetization that you're doing with those video, and which is leading to, is it just going to stay a sideline, or could it become your main professional occupation if it gets to a certain level of following and views?
I'm not sure. I actually don't think it'll ever get to a point I could live off doing YouTube videos in the same way other successful channels are able to do so. But similar to the thing where I don't like doing the same thing a lot, I enjoy sort of different challenges. And I think if I suddenly find myself reliant on doing YouTube videos, then I don't know, I'm worried I might come to resent it, and then I won't enjoy doing it, and then I'll make worse products, and then it'll just kind of have this horrible kind of effect on the quality. So I'm kind of enjoying the sort of the mid flow I'm at the moment, where it's like successful enough, but I'm not kind of relying on it. So
it's kind of a nice place as a third. So there's like the freelancing, and that is so animating, being a professional animator, and then there's a teaching on the side, and there's this other thing that is building.
Like a little bit of pocket money. Yeah. But
at the same time, that is informing the two others, because it helps with the teaching. It brings you new knowledge that can influence and inspire your own animation. So all of them are feeding each other.
And also, it's a form of networking as well. Really, I've got to know quite a few people through doing YouTube. It's kind of helped inform my so I tweet a fair bit as well, and I'll tweet like little mini tutorials about how to do certain things, and that kind of has got like a following from that as well. And I've gotten some jobs through people I've met through YouTube and Twitter and stuff. So it has a lot of effects. There are a lot of kind of effects that come from it. Meeting people.
That's something that we've discussed in the last few weeks as well, that, the more and more people are going towards freelancing for obvious reason. And when you're a freelancer, you become almost like a mini, your entrepreneur, your own company, basically.
Yeah.
And that comes with branding. I mean, if you put yourself out there, if you show work, I mean, you are probably one of the more extreme example of creating a successful YouTube channel with sharing video that some of them I've seen more than a million people, but that's something that will become more and more important. Maybe not to the level of success that you've had so far with this channel, but at least you want to have more opportunities. Put yourself out there, create some content, make connection, create those little 1-minute tutorials, share them on LinkedIn and YouTube, and one thing is going to lead to another, and you have no idea, but the project that you'll have the opportunity to work on 2 years from now is actually going to be the butterfly effect of what you're doing today.
Like, so it's like the seed is here somewhere, and then further down the line, there'll be
it's like delayed gratification at some extent. But I'm just glad to hear that. Yes, the videos that you did had an impact on your animation career, even if those are not directly related at all.
Yeah, I think so. It's like, it's not just for like, not for nothing. It's not like I'm bored, so I'll make a video. Like, I've actually thought about the impact the videos could have on people. I've had some comments on videos saying, this is amazing, it's really helpful. There's a lot of aspiring animators who will watch some of the videos and they'll kind of say, this is fantastic, this is kind of what I wanted to know, this was something I was struggling with. So I think that's kind of validation itself. Like, I'm glad that even if it's just 1 or 2 people that it kind of helped out, that it helped them out. So that's it's a good feeling.
I think your most successful video, at least in terms of views, was the Metroid video that got I think 1.6 million, right?
That was. I've got like a little side passion about kind of how atmosphere is created in games, and specifically Metroid. And I just kind of started this little side series, kind of separate from animation, but kind of it's all about like aesthetics and everything. And Metroid Fusion was just one of those old games that just kind of just hit everything just right for me at the age I was when I was playing it, and just how it accomplished it. Again, like the 16 and 8-bit kind of style, they just pushed what they could do with the hardware and the sound design, which was brilliant. And and clearly it's resonated with a lot of people. Like, a lot of people feel the same way because it's people watch it and comment on it and everything.
Did you crack the code a little bit of how can you predict how well a video is going to do? Can you say, oh well, this video had more than 1 million views for this reason, and I knew that this one would only have like 25K, but it's fine? Do you start to have perspective of what is working and what is working a little bit less?
I kind of anticipated that the Mario Kart video wouldn't like do well as such. 10,000 views is a fair odd amount of money. I mean, it's not views. A fair amount of views. The 1 million views, that's a fair amount of money. But it's like it's nothing to like to sniff at. But I can usually tell if it's going to do well or not, depending on the kind of content. Because I think now I've kind of worked into this kind of, not like a corner, but I can tell if it's something that's going to be a bit too niche, then people probably won't care. Like the Echo the Dolphin one didn't do particularly well either. But I knew that if the one about Mega Man was going to do fairly well, because most people have heard of Mega Man. And I knew that people would be interested in that. And Metroid videos tend to do fairly well on my channel as well. So that's I'm sometimes worried, like, if I do a Metroid video, that's going to be like the 10th Metroid video I've done. And I don't necessarily want to be like a Metroid channel, but I can't help it. I just like it. So it's
So back to your point, if your main motivation was to have the maximize on the views because it's your main source of income, then your motivation will be, okay, what is going to be the most popular video, instead of being, okay, what am I passionate about right now, and what am I really inspired to be working on?
Sorry, so if I wasn't, if like the spreadability of the video wasn't an issue, is that?
No, if the YouTube channel was your main source of income.
Also, if I did actually have to,
then your motivation will be what will be the most popular video instead of being what am I really inspired to share right now with the community, even if it's pretty niche.
Yeah, I honestly don't know, because the way YouTube kind of the algorithm works, it depends on a lot of things, because you have these analytics you can kind of check on your channel to sort of see how it's getting fed out when you publish it. Kind of things, it kind of correlates things that are trending as well. People will put kind of tags in their videos. So I think if I were to actually push and make the channel, push for like 1 million subscribers or something, and make it a reliable source, I'd probably go for big releases, like big game releases, and kind of talk about the animation in those. The only thing stopping me doing that mostly is like the time I have, obviously with my family and freelancing, and the time I have to play the games, and just how much they are as well. Like I can't buy huge games every month either. I think that's the other holdback. Because I was really interested. I wanted to do a short video about, there was some kind of controversy about the God of War game that's coming out, about they'd reused the boat animation or something, like when the dude pushes the boat into the water, and people just were getting a bit snippy about the idea of paying for a game that kind of reuses animations.
Oh jeez.
And I really want to
my God.
If only they knew.
Yeah, I really want to make a video and jump into about it, but that's the sort of thing where if you're on the ball and you get that video out quickly, then when it's trending and hot, then it will go out. But I just knew by the time I had written the idea and kind of got it out and be like,
it'd already be stale.
Yeah. Dead in the water. So
you show up with your shield and your sword, and it's just the battlefield, just a bunch of corpses.
Yeah. It's funny that people got weird about that. I'm just like, honestly, maybe this is where the education thing comes in, perhaps. I don't know.
I think so. It's in a weird way, I kind of always felt that these kinds of channels are important to expose some of the realities behind what it takes to make a game, because there's one thing is, and I'm a video game player, so I'm part of that group, but I find that a lot of video game players tend to be very how do I say this? They tend to be kind of fickle. They can turn on you, and a lot of that I feel like is just coming from a place of them not really knowing. You know what I mean? I feel like if they just knew, how much time and energy and how much care and passion that people are putting in to make this game for them, and it's not going to be perfect, and corners do need to be cut. It's tricky. You see this all the time, where a very popular company delays the release of the game, and how visceral and how toxic some of the sort of the rhetoric is coming from the player base, of how upset and they want their money back, and this is ridiculous, and then the game comes out and it's suddenly all is forgiven because it's a good game, and they forget of how much of a goof they were a little while ago, bitching, complaining about how they had to wait for this perfection that came out eventually, and it's just it's a tricky space, and I think some education could help maybe a little to kind of bring that down a little bit.
Yeah, I think definitely as well. And I forget sometimes, the internet is a kind of an anonymous place, at least visually. Sometimes you can chat to online. I'm kind of 36. I don't argue online, but if I was to kind of engage in sort of this sort of no, you're wrong. They could be 16, 17. They haven't really. Not to say we're older, we know more, we know better, but they haven't had the experience of playing all these different games. But that could be one angle of it anyway. But yeah, I remember, when the Cyberpunk came out, obviously that was a big deal. Very good example. And I think that speaks to, I don't actually know, what the internal problems were, why it kind of shipped the way it did. But I think, if anything, that could be an advocate for good communication in a studio. And that's all I can assume is perhaps what the problem was. Maybe the departments were under pressure from time, perhaps, and
for sure,
profit. So I think all those little things, anything that can neaten up and smooth out those processes, will be a good thing, really.
Yeah. No, I agree. Hey, I put something up. It's a little late to the party here, but I wanted to bring it up anyways because came up in chat when we were talking about game feel. If there are animators, by the way, if you joined us late, then we're talking to Dan Root. Dan Root is a veteran animator, and he also is the creator behind the wonderful YouTube channel called Video Game Animation Study. And so we're just talking a little bit about what that's like, and what his many hours spent researching the topic of animation video games has sort of meant to him. So the topic of game feel came up. I asked him, like, what would be the number? Well, I said that what are the top few things that you would say are the most important things for animators to know about? And he talked about number one being game feel. This is a thing that you need to understand. And there happens to be a really good book written on this very topic. It's called Game Feel, perfectly named book by a person named Steve Swink. It is a good book. I have it myself. Brilliant. I would highly recommend it.
Excellent. Because they kind of what got me interested in, because I made a few videos about sort of the fundamentals of game animation, which is a book by Jonathan Cooper. Ever heard about this one? Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was kind of that got me inspired to sort of make videos. I kind of sort of liaised with him a little bit and spoke to him and was like, is this cool that I kind of use this because this is really interesting, and like kind of used that as like an inspiration to kind of structure my videos and kind of ran it by him and everything. And that's great. So Game Feel by Steve Swink. Excellent. I'll have to check that out. I haven't actually heard of it. So.
Yeah, it's a very good one. I think you're gonna enjoy it because it's gonna be like right up your alley. I think you'll be like, this person is reading my mind. It's a very good book. So I highly recommend if you're interested in game animation, you're already a game animator and you want to get better at this is a good book to pick up. It talks a lot about the sort of the psychology and like just there's a lot of things going on, right? Like you're in charge of making a character move believably, but in a way that feels like it's you doing it. You know what I mean? Like you're the one sending these impulses through a wire or wirelessly, depending on how high tech you are, I guess. Through a controller into a system that's then going to make this avatar do the thing that you're and do it in a way that's both efficient but also fulfills that player fantasy. There's so many things going on it's really tricky to consider it all, but that's the job. A game animator, if they can balance all those things, they will be highly successful, and the game field tries to sum up all those ideas into one singular thread of topic.
Brilliant. That sounds like you say, right up my alley. So
it is right up your alley. Absolutely.
It's funny. So I'm trying to I'm sort of trying to make an indie game with a friend as well, like a coder. Nice. So it's like I'm firsthand kind of learning the sort of the perils of video game animation. I think something that I think is more important to animators, and something animators need to be okay with, it's just starting again. Like if something's not working, you got to be okay with just sort of scrapping that idea. If it's just not working, it's like you just start again. You'll often find, because I'm trying to work out the fine tuning of this little run cycle for a character, and I did the keyframes, and I was like, that looks awesome. I'll do some in betweens. So I was like, that looks trash. I've ruined it. I've like added too many frames now. So it's definitely an iterative process.
It really is. You cannot go in it with the idea of just making this beautiful thing that you're going to shove into the game. It needs to be, how can I put something in that's very draft that will give the basic core under like the staging of it, like the timing and the overall feel. And then just see if you can like the game I like to play when making the game is to say how minimalistic can you be with that first iteration so that you're not wasting time on polishing things that are going to get thrown away or changed entirely. Yeah. It's a really interesting experience. The very, very, like you said, iterative sort of approach, because it's like the iterate on a regular Maya session is like you animate, play blast, review, animate, change, animate, review. And it's like that's closed loop, but it's like in a video game is just, it's the other thing that happens in a video game is then suddenly another feature comes along and then it totally is like, oh no. Oh man, what I thought used to work now doesn't work so well because, or like they want to add something like, oh, you want to be able to shoot while in the air while jumping? Oh, well, yikes. We didn't build it in a way that would even make that like look good at all. So we have to rethink that and unpack that. And then, so it's just amazing how many things can change all the time in a video game.
Yeah, definitely. I think something else as well is, do I keep cutting you off, David? I keep seeing like, am I?
It's all good. Go on.
I was just going to say, like the tools available now to just anyone. You can just download Unity for free and start working on it. Like
Same
I think
with Unreal.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of, just put the tools out there for people to use, as accessible as possible. Like we were saying earlier before, the pre-roll, like accessibility is definitely the theme for, the last 5 years. And I think, that's only a good thing. Give people the tools and, they'll do wonders with it, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we live in an era that, education is, it's not all free, but it's more accessible than ever. You have those software that you can find, and often you can have, educational version for free. You have those game engine that are provided for free. This is why I think maybe it contributes to why I hear that some people are offended that a boat animation in Game of War might have been reused, that they're offended by that. I'm like, what about all this opportunity and free stuff to be creative and show us what you can do instead of whining in your couch? I mean, there's many things that are worth complaining about, like the culture at some studio and how some studio are treating their employee, and how people are behaving with each other. But in terms of complaining about the final result of a game, I mean, I understand that gamers are passionate, but just don't buy it. There's so many games. Don't buy it. That's it. They're going to be fine. They don't need your $60.
I don't know. People waste a lot of energy kind of moaning about things. People like to moan about things, I think. And they like to know that people have seen them moan about things. And that's another thing about having a YouTube channel. You get to see that side of things. I mean, I just ignore that stuff. I never engage in it. It's not worth my energy. But people do.
I don't know where you would have the time otherwise.
Oh yeah, exactly.
I think I'm pretty sure if you did a research, the correlation between the amount of time that you spend on bitching and arguing with people online and your creative output on the other side, they must be like
Oh yeah, there's
impacted by one. Yeah, for sure. And Brent, I think that we've spoke enough about Jonathan Cooper on this stream to bring him to the.
I am going to try my best. It was hot when he first put out his second edition of that book, because for those who do know that book that Dan had referenced, there is a second edition he just released very recently, which has been updated with a bunch of new juicy stuff. So I do highly recommend that book. It is great, and I will reach out to him again, see if I can get him on. I think he was when I spoke to him, he was. I mean, it's hard, right? Because when you work for a video game company and you're as public of a figure as he is, I think he has to always ride that line a little bit to try to make sure that he doesn't, draw maybe too much attention to himself. And he's already drawing a lot just by putting out books and stuff. And he's a very vocal guy. I worked with him a couple times, never directly, but over at Ubisoft. He's definitely knows what he's talking about. And I'm sure he's also got a website that's, I would say, one of the go-to places on the internet for video game animation related stuff. It's just called GameAnim.com. Pretty easy to remember. So you should head over there and show Jonathan a little bit of love. So we'll see if we can get him on the show. That'd be great.
Oh yeah, we'll have him on the show.
One day he will be here.
One day he will. He will come. Let's maybe go see if there's a few questions from.
Yeah, there are a few. Yeah, it's a good idea. So we have a question here, which is a great one. It's from Sergey Shutko. Here it is. Sorry if it was already asked, and it wasn't. So that's awesome that you were asking it. Dan, where did you learn? Like, did you learn somewhere? Yes, okay. So you use all the studying of animation. You're an animator, but this thing that often isn't talked about is where did you pick up the skills to produce this amazing content that you put out there? Is this something self-taught, or did you learn this in school somewhere?
Well, I learned a bit of Premiere when I was at university studying animation. So I had the basics of, sort of. I think. That's the thing, like having the basics to learn on. So like cutting footage out, moving it around, changing the audio. That was just kind of a base skill I learned at university. But there's, like I said earlier, there's some very good kind of free resource videos that people put out, for like I was saying earlier about the tools, giving people the tools to do stuff, and then they can create further greater things as well. So there are great YouTube tutorials about how to use Premiere, but a lot of it is just through experimentation myself with the software, because I have the Adobe suite myself, so I use it kind of every day for my job. So it's a bit of learning from university, a bit of tinkering with it myself, and just kind of naturally kind of developing those skills as I go. Really.
Did you spend some time looking at other content on the internet and be like, oh, I like kind of how they're doing it, and you sort of maybe try to emulate that a little bit, or just sort of come up with your own style?
Yeah, well, I said earlier that the Game Maker's Toolkit channel by Mike Brown, that he was a big inspiration on me putting quality into my videos. So that was kind of an inspiration. That's like very kind of video essay style videos.
A lot of production quality there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I was also really interested in, because I remember watching the old Ego Raptor videos, Aaron Hansen from Game Grumps. Like he did animated sort of reviews, and that was kind of where I started with the videos. Like I had a little animated host talk about the video, and eventually that just got too much work. I was like, I can't animate another character again. That's going to take months. So I eventually dropped the little animated host idea. But that was something that kind of inspired me as well, just kind of make it a bit more engaging and entertaining, I guess.
And the animated host would be such a great idea, but like, man, oh man, like just the thought of the extra time we would have to go into doing that is just terrifies me.
It's like, I can't afford a studio to animate that for me.
Yeah,
it's just,
exactly. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's funny to think that you want to learn how to make video for YouTube. Go on YouTube and search for how to make video.
That's
exactly right there.
Yeah, you're already in the right place. I find it also interesting. You talked about accessibility and cost. Like you're using the Premiere Suite, which is justified by the fact you have a pretty good following on YouTube, so you can probably just pay for that. Obviously, from what you make off of the YouTube monetization, I'm hoping. But not everyone has that kind of coin. So there are alternatives out there. A lot of people are using Blender these days for their actual animation, and they're using DaVinci Resolve for their editing and their compositing, because DaVinci Resolve is completely free. There is a studio version which has a bunch of extra VFX-y kind of stuff that you would only need if you were in a professional environment, I think. But it does amazing color grading. It does its editing workflow is actually getting better and better, and maybe not quite exactly where Premiere is at yet, but it's very comparable. And it has all these extra much better, like it's almost like having After Effects built into it, because it's part of the module, which is very convenient. Yeah, it's definitely worth looking into if you are also out there thinking, hey, maybe I want to make a channel these days. And you could do it on the free. It's actually very, very doable. Unreal, Blender, DaVinci Resolve. It's like the trifecta. You're good to go.
Yeah, because something I always try to look out for as well is like cheaper alternatives for those starting out. So I trial sort of different animation software. So I use a lot of like Rough Animator on iPad, which again that's just being on iPad is like fairly sort of out there. But there's like Clip Studio Paint, and is there a thing called Critter? I've heard some I kind of talk to my students as well, because obviously they're looking into cheaper alternatives. So it's good to hear like Blender can do 2D animation and everything. That's like
it's crazy. Cool. Like Blender, and it's not just this, but Blender, even the sculpting, if you're not in animation, but you're into like modeling characters, the sculpting is very, very, very mature. The skill set, the tool set there. So it's comparable. And some people are like switching from ZBrush. I think most people are probably going to stick with ZBrush because it's still the industry standard and it's still better at a bunch of things. But like for people that are just starting out that don't need the best, there's a free option sitting right there. And most of those skills you're going to learn are going to be very portable over to ZBrush anyways, if you needed to upgrade to ZBrush. So definitely something you should be considered. Absolutely. Now there's one, of course, disadvantage of like the advantage of having Adobe Suite is that you comes with all the other things. Like if you're getting the whole suite, right? But it's you get all the other things like Animate and all these other things that you may or may not even need access to. But.
Well, because I share the suite with a friend. You get 2 logins, so because there's a lot of design stuff. So that has kind of split the payment, so it's not quite as expensive.
That's smart. Very smart.
But he's kind of into the design stuff, so he uses like InDesign and Illustrator, and then I use the animation stuff. So it's kind of it feels justified, sort of
for sure.
The usage.
If you're a student, by the way, there's a pretty hefty discount for the Adobe Suite. So you should also consider that. Student or teacher, actually. You're a teacher at university. I hope you're getting well, maybe you can't use it because you're actually using it for your channel, maybe.
I get like student licenses for other stuff like Toon Boom. I'm able to kind of use that because that's a very expensive piece of software.
It sure is. That's actually homegrown here in Quebec, actually, Toon Boom.
Oh, no way, really?
Yep. Oh, and I love the Storyboard Pro component of the Toon Boom sort of suite. If you've never used Toon Boom before, it's really probably the industry standard for actually 2D animation production.
Like they must make shows on that and stuff.
Yes, that's it. Exactly. Yeah. And it started with it was a very powerful digital ink and paint tool. They just expanded it. Like Harmony is like a full featured suite where you can actually animate and finalize with the digital ink and paint as well. if you can get your hands on it, if you're interested, it's pretty good.
Yeah, like because they kind of have ups the compositing game in it as well. You know, like
Yes,
you can do a lot of After Effects-y type stuff in it. So
yes, like a lot of layers and almost like this 2.5D kind of stuff that they can do in there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really fancy. Yeah.
I got another question that rolled in here. If you wanted a career in video game design/development, where would you even start? This is the question.
Well, I guess this is where I am actually, like, you know, because I'm kind of keen to actually work in video games myself. So,
yeah.
I mean, playing video games, I would say, counts as research. So, you know, I think, I think cool. Kind of showing a keen interest in the games you like, you know, kind of research the studios, kind of figure out where they are, other stuff they've done, how that studio started, perhaps look into the people who work there, kind of research their background, you know, kind of look at the things they produce, whether that's not video game related, you know, and see if that kind of feeds into other areas of design. And yeah, I think, I mean, it depends what area of video game development you want to kind of dive into, because, you know, coding and, you know, front end and back end stuff are very different things, you know. Not saying that like back end stuff isn't creative, but I think you need to have a different type of mind to do the coding and everything. So yeah, it depends if you know, if you're doing front end visual stuff, I guess being a creative is is a good starting point, you know. So if you're into illustration or art of any kind, you know, that's a good place to start building a portfolio from.
That's good advice. You know, it's funny. I think that you know, I think that in my mind, I would just say, make sure you know what the job is. I mean, in a weird, funny way, Dan represents the textbook perfect case of an animator who wants to enter the animation industry because he studied so thoroughly what it is. He's clearly interested in it because, like, I mean, he's got a body of evidence that suggests that he is like literally become an academic in it. And
that could be my portfolio if I want to work in video games.
No, but for sure it would be. If you were, if you would have no trouble at all. Like, people would just be like, "Can you please? Like, what do we need to do to get you in here?" Because they need more people that think like you. Because clearly you're embracing what makes video game animation different, you know, to celebrate that and to understand and to like unpack it. And like, I think a lot of people try to get into the job and they're maybe not even really interested or not familiar with video game culture and like what they're even like they don't even play games. And also they just have zero concept as to what the actual job is as a video game animator, or the things we touched on in this conversation. So I would say start there. Make sure you learn what it is.
Yeah.
I would say, and that's something that we touched before, because I had the chance to work both in you know, animated feature, VFX, and video game. And in video game, one of the things that is very different with the others is the amount of impact that you can have. So an animator can have a great idea for a level that's going to have. So so I would say just get your foot in the door. Let's take an easy example of being an animator. Get a video game studio, get into gameplay animation team, and then start from there. And if your interest is to maybe become a level designer because you like to create puzzles and stuff that, well, you know, hang out with those people and talk about them, and, you know, be interested and share your ideas. And one thing might lead to another. And after a year, you might slowly migrate to this other department. But even if you started from an ice animation, but it could be character design, it could be, there are some people that just did, like, they entered by being a QA testing game, you know, as they were studying, and when they finished, it was their gateway to get in. So just get in somehow, figure out what is going to interest you, and slowly steer in this direction. And if there's any industry that allow those, you know, horizontal move from one department to the other, it's definitely video game.
Yeah, I think it depends kind of where you live as well, like how accessible studios are. But I think in this day and age, I think it's much easier just to, you know, to do stuff online, particularly in the last year. You know, I think we've learned that, you know, that again, accessibility, you know, coming back to that, you know, it's easier to do stuff these days. But I think you'd probably, with a bit of research, you'll probably be surprised about how many studios are actually nearby. Like, I forget there's quite a few, you know, game development studios in Cambridge, which isn't too far from here in Norwich. And you know, obviously you have all the varying Rockstar studios. Is it actually the Rockstar North, you know, who make GTA are actually in Scotland, or are they actually mostly in America, or do they have not sure how it works now.
Well, a lot of the Rockstar games are sort of democratized. Actually, I find a lot of them are being there's usually a lead studio, but like Ubisoft, they tend to also have a lot of the work being done at some of the other studios. So
Okay.
I'm not familiar exactly with where exactly the GTA franchise is being led from anymore. I'm not too sure. But there's there's a Rockstar North in North America, and that's actually just outside of Toronto. It's in Oakville, which is the same city that Sheridan College at Big Animation School is. So but then there's Rockstars everywhere, like Ubisoft. They're popping.
That's weird. I thought Rockstar North was the one in Scotland, so maybe I'm thinking of a different one then.
I might be wrong. Maybe they call it Rockstar Toronto now. I don't know, but it doesn't really matter.
All changes, yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? Can't keep up with these things. I have another one here from none other than Scott Hewitt, who's our community manager. Actually, he's always got the good questions. This is one that's perfect for you, Dan. Just got myself a tablet to start practicing digital art. Can you suggest any resources for learning 2D effects? I've seen the books called Elemental Magic. Also, any idea where I could get feedback on my work?
Oh wow, yeah, a lot there. Yes, Elemental Magic is fantastic. I can recommend that. It's because there's 2 books that are out. I think there's Elemental Magic 2. I've kind of skimmed Elemental Magic 2, and I think it's the first one, Elemental Magic, is I think that's a good starting place. Like it covers a lot. It covers a lot of varying effects. The second one, I think it focuses a lot more just on particularly water and fire. So it's a little bit more closed off. But let me think.
I've never even heard of this book. I'm looking at it right now. I'm going to put a link up in that. It's an Amazon link.
Yeah, I don't think I have it nearby, because books is another thing I'm massively interested in, like art books, animation books. Like I've just got a shelf just full of.
I know.
Like
too.
Yeah, like I got the special edition Metroid Dread for the art book, and it's just it's like that thick. It's like got loads of cool artwork in there. Yeah, so that's definitely a good one. There's a lot of Twitter profiles. There's a lot of animators on Twitter who post little animated tutorials. Jason Tom Lee is one that springs to mind. He kind of posts like the effect. They're like a little frame breakdown of what's going on, and like little dialogue boxes that kind of speak about maybe the physics perhaps of what's going on. So I'd recommend the hashtag like 2D effects would be quite handy. Just plop on Twitter, and you'll see people who post these sort of things. In terms of feedback, I guess you could just reach out to some animators and just say, do you fancy looking at my work? Because I get that kind of sent to me on Twitter sometimes as well. Sometimes, I'll be quite busy, and I'll be like, I'll try and look at this when I can, and sometimes I don't get to. But yeah, I think just reaching out to people. There's probably, I don't know, I'm not too big on some of the sort of the communal art websites anymore. Like the last thing I was part of was DeviantArt, so it's but I imagine there are websites like that, perhaps ArtStation. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I was going to suggest exactly that. ArtStation, I think, is really pushing the game on to tutorializing, because ever since Epic purchased ArtStation, I think that we've seen a little bit of an increase in sort of an interest to make sure that they use it as a hub for not just community, but also for education.
Yeah. So that
we're going to see big changes there for sure.
Yeah, excellent. So that would be my thoughts on that.
I was just browsing kind of on the side there at this. I've never even heard of this book, and I think I might want to pick it up myself, because I don't have anything in my library on this topic, and it looks like it's being spoken to. Like I think that Joseph Gilland, who's the author of this book. I think he's got probably a 2D background, a 2D effects background by the looks of it, because looking at the images inside.
Yeah, I think because having read it, I didn't actually see the publication date, but I think it's maybe early to mid 2000s, perhaps late 2000s. So I think it's
2009.
Kind of before.
That's the first one.
Okay, yeah. So I think there's a little bit before this kind of massive influx in 3D take up. So it might be not outdated, but I think it could be updated.
Oh, I don't think, no, I didn't mean that as a bad thing. I think that, as a matter of fact, I believe that sort of the sensibilities that come from a 2D sort of like, perspective, like 2D effects artists back in the day of like hand-drawn classical animators, these people are magicians. Like, I mean, the work that they would do, and it's still very much very similar attitude, because like these effects are done in layers, the same way that they would have done it before. It just, it's more powerful now because those layers can be three-dimensional and volumetric. And so obviously they can just be more amazing than they already could be. But I think that the fundamental concepts of the way like elements move, I think it's like a book like this is great because it would give you a really good ground level of understanding that you could build on for sure. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because he talks about sort of the kind of foreword in it. He mentions about the classic Disney animators, 101 Dalmatians, that kind of era. He talks about like there wasn't really a visual effects animators back then. Like anything that wasn't character animation, someone else did. So visual effects could have been a coat blowing in the wind, some hay falling off of a shelf or something. And water and fire. So like that was like way more stressful probably to think about, like to approach that problem case by case, as opposed to sort of like he's going to get up and walk over there. You know.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's very that's evolved quite a lot.
Fun fact, because I worked in 2D animation for a while, the effects animators were often the ones in charge of adding highlight and shadow layers on top of the animation characters as well. They needed to understand light well enough to be able to sort of on another layer be like, oh, okay, well here's the form moving around. Let me try to introduce a consistent three-dimensional feeling light to that scene. Where obviously only the big productions like Disney were able to afford that extra layer of work on top of everything. We saw that very heavily done with Klaus or Claus.
Oh man, Klaus.
There was a lot of work done in that particular area.
So
anyways, I always think it's fun that it was like back then, it was like the animators they're going to pay the animators to do it. They got another person who really understood light to do that. And it tended to fall to the effects department. Yeah,
that's another thing I've had a recent interest in is like light around characters. That's something I've been experimenting just on my iPad, like in the evenings if I'm kind of chilling out animating. It's like just pretending have like a little orb go around. I'll take a still from something, perhaps. Usually ends up being Mega Man because that's what I gravitate to if I'm chilling out. I'll kind of imagine a little orb of light and I'll paint on this kind of fake 3D, almost like a bump map, I guess, of going around it. And it's just another fascinating. There's so many things you wouldn't think of as being part of effects animation, and light, I think, is part of that. Yeah, it's great.
Totally agree.
And for you, Dan, you have a preference between FX animation and character animation?
I think effects is, I want to say easier, but only because I find doing it easier because I do it so much, perhaps. Like character animation is, maybe just for me, character animation is quite complicated, but like I can sit down and kind of animate fire at any point and I'll do it and I'll be pleased with them. Like, yeah, that's awesome. And
so satisfying.
And that's just something I just kind of just love doing. So I think effects is kind of where my passion is at right now.
I've never done it myself, but I can totally picture that you just get in the zone and you just animate those shapes, and it's abstract, it's intuitive. You don't think too much about it. You just need to understand shape, timing, and a little bit of physics might help. That's it. You just get in the zone and do it.
No fingers and eyeballs and things like this. It's a bit more free flowing and a little bit more liberating, I think.
Yeah, well, like I was saying earlier about how kind of trying to visualize like what you know in your head, like out as words. I think for like fire animation is something I still struggle to teach in words, because trying to talk about the physics and airflow and just how fire behaves, like something I can do it myself easily, like in the evening. I was like, oh, that little bit's going to go up there, but trying to explain why that bit is going to do that is like,
it's abstract. It's like, how do you describe the shape of fire, for instance? Like,
and like on top of that, you can stylize stuff as well. Like I like with my fire, I kind of like to do sort of curves and then like cut in with like a little sharp edge and do straight lines and so there's a whole different ways you can stylize it as well. So not only you've got to understand the real world physics, you then have to work out how that will apply to your own style as well. So
there's a graphic design element to it. I like, for instance, one of the effects that I, for some reason, still to this day, still sticks in my brain as a reference, as like that is a cool effect in a video game. I always really loved the smoke effect in Zelda Wind Waker. Do you remember those? They were like these really beautiful swirlies. I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know why. I don't know. I'm just like, maybe I'm just a sucker for swirly textures, but I mean, there's something about how graphic that looked. It was so
that
dope.
Felt ahead of its time. Like looking back, and it was like 2002, man.
Yeah, I know.
It's like when it came out on HD for Wii U, I was like, that's how it's always looked, surely. And then like, oh, actually, it's been updated. But it's funny. I actually did a video on how to animate an explosion on my channel, which is I'm still bummed out. It hasn't done that well because I put a lot of effort into it, and people just don't seem interested. Well, maybe the YouTube algorithm doesn't seem interested, but people loved it when I watched it. But I love the explosions are another thing I love. Like I'm really trying to hone in that skill because there's an animator called Alex Redfish who does a lot of game animation for visual effects for games, and he's just god tier, just amazing.
Next level. Yeah, man.
Yeah, Alex Redfish actually does kind of tutorials, or at least he used to on DeviantArt. So that's another thing. The person earlier was asking about kind of where to get some good inspiration. Alex Redfish is he's a fantastic visual effects animator.
I may or may not be writing that name down.
Yeah, definitely recommend. There's some great stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to get some more effects-oriented animators on this. It's a very unknown art, and I think it's almost like it suffers from a recruiting PR problem. Like we need more people to maybe just know it's a thing. You know what I mean? Like I know that we've had people on the show here that became character animators, and they were fascinated when they were young that it was a thing. They didn't even know. I think it's probably not as big of a problem now. I think animation is pretty household. People understand you can make a career out of that. Back in the day, maybe not so much. Back in the early 2000s and maybe before, it might have been a bit more like it's like moving to LA and becoming an actor. It's like
maybe it was the internet that did it. Maybe it's like Newgrounds and everything. That again, accessibility. I think just once people had the tools and they could do it themselves, I think that maybe that's what kind of blew that interest out of the water.
It's possible. We got probably time for one last question. David, you game?
Let's do it.
Okay. You good too, Dan? If we go one more, I don't think we're going to go too much past what we wanted to do, but
that's
here.
Great.
All right. We got one from Petar. Petar always brings the heat when it comes to questions. All right. So do you have any recommendations for 2D effects artists looking for work, asking you for a friend? So like, I guess I'm meaning what would be the best angle on trying to crack that nut?
I see. So if you're in the 2D effects artist looking for work, I guess it's similar to the game development one earlier, I suppose. So it's I think it's more about building this kind of portfolio idea and just kind of sending it out to people. I guess it's not too dissimilar to how we used to apply for jobs, sort of maybe in the olden days, just kind of just forcing your work, just putting it in front of people to see. I think, and using hashtags on Twitter, I think social media, it's got its ups and downs, but I think sometimes getting your work visible is a benefit of that. I'd kind of suggest that route to start off with. I think. I'm
looking at Petar comment right now, and what about the other way around for a studio that would be looking to find a good 2D VFX animator? Where do they hang out?
Correct. Yeah, maybe I did misunderstand that. Well, there's a 2D FX animator Discord, which is kind of where I sort of have met some more visual effects animators, which is really good. We started like this monthly idea, but as yet I don't think many people have really done entries, but like a little idea where we'd say like a prompt for a visual effect, and we just kind of submit our animations. Like I think the first one we did was like a candle in a cave, or like a torch in a cave and the wind's blowing, and the second one was like doing one of the Ghostbusters streamers. But it's one of those things you have to keep on top of, and it's like just if it's just for your own personal thing, it's like that'll have to take priority backseat. But yeah, I don't think there's like a particularly like a pool of perhaps where visual animators kind of are available to kind of pick from, like a LinkedIn of visual animators.
Yeah, but sorry, Petar, there's no VFX, animator tree that you could just pick one off the tree.
There's but I mean, there's the Discord group, which is a start, I think.
Is that a discoverable Discord channel? Like, 'cause someone can go looking for it and just join, or is that something that someone's going to need a link for?
Yeah, I wonder if it's maybe because I think it's for 2D animators to kind of congregate, and So I'm just trying to think if it's a public one or not. But maybe this could be the start. Maybe I'll suggest it in there. So like maybe there should be a public facing front for people to come to Effects Animators for.
The tricky thing with Discord is you need to be of a certain size before you could become quite like literally public and then discoverable and therefore just joinable for the public. That's the weird thing about Discord is it's sort of like there's a barrier there for servers. Like Agora.Community, for instance, we have a server, but it's not publicly facing because we haven't reached that size yet.
Yeah,
we will eventually for sure, but it's we're getting there. So I mean, what's the name again? Do you know the actual name of the server? Because I mean, that way at least.
No, yeah, I'd have to. I'll have to find it. I can't actually. See it right now, but yeah, I'll be sure to send that across. But
send it to me by email if you want. I can get it to Petter.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's interesting. I think there should be definitely I think there's probably a need for that. We can find people looking for work. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, well, Dan, we're out of time. I greatly appreciate, on behalf of myself and, of course, everyone in our community, thank you for taking the time out of your day to hang out with us.
You're perfectly welcome. Thanks for bringing me on. It's been great. It's nice chatting, to other animators and, just chewing the fat and everything. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
That'd be great. And for everyone, go check his channel. There's a lot of golden nuggets of knowledge out there. So it's both very entertaining and informative. So go check it out.
I concur with that. I concur. Okay, well, enjoy the rest of your day / evening / where I guess evening for you, Dan.
It's about 8:30 now. So
yes, sir.
Yeah.
So enjoy that. And David, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you both on the next ones. Cheers.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
That was great.
Another conversation with another amazing conversation. Obviously, I do agree with David said. You really do need to take a look at his channel. It is very comprehensive, and I think it's sort of I would say a really great place to start if you want to wrap your head around what game animation is, because he's done all that work for you. So if you go and you could think of it like a cheat sheet if you want to go and really get up to speed very quickly, and if that stuff kind of excites you, then you probably belong in game animation. You know what I mean? It's not for everybody. I'm not going to lie. You hear me say this all the time. I'm a broken record, but you should definitely do the homework to understand what it is. And because it is very particular with regards to how the process is and how iterative it is and things you need to think about. And if you are like me, I tend to think like an engineer. I really like that part. It's like it's a puzzle every single time. It's not just about emotions. It's about emotions and action and reaction and latency and like feel. Essentially, it's much more. Many more dimensions to it than just shape and form and timing. So it's definitely quite the thing to master. And if you're into those things, if that excites you, then you should definitely plunge right in. But educate yourself a little bit first, because it's going to give you a little bit more. It's going to prepare you better for building a really good demo reel and being able to communicate really nicely in an interview. I do have a fun little announcement for everybody that is completely unrelated to the conversation we just had. And that is that I know this is a little bit late in the game, but we did. We first of all, we've started having conversations about another event that's happening. We had a really big one back in February, and so it was so well received that we are definitely thinking about doing another one. We don't exactly know what the form is. We haven't completely put our notes together and brainstormed exactly what it is, but we are putting together another really cool event. But we do. And thank you, Petter. Thank you for plugging my animation class. You're very nice. It's true. I do teach over at iAnimate. I teach an intro to game animation. So if you do want to invest in a sort of a deep dive in that, then I'd be more than happy to see you over there. We have a shirt. And this is for the Anim Bingo series that we did, which was a follow-up to our 24-hour animation challenge. And this was for people who won bingo. So you will be getting these things. We've had our team reaching out to people that were winners. We've been doing it via Twitch, so directly like the Agora community. If someone reaches out to you as Agora community on Twitch, then please do respond, because we're looking for your mailing address. We know that it's not the ideal scenario. We're going to be looking for better ways of doing this, so you don't have to reveal your public or your private information to us. Trust me, we're safe. You don't have to worry about us doing anything weird with your information. But we understand that it's not it's not the greatest way of doing it. So we're looking for a better way of making this happen without you having to disclose that. So as you can see, it was so funny because I showed this to my daughter. I'm like, I'm in there. Do you see me? And she's like, there was no hesitation. She knew exactly who I was. There was no prompting necessary. She's like, well, that's you, obviously, right there at the top. So we have caricatures of pretty much all the characters that showed up. There's Jacob there at the bottom center. We have the Dave, have you not seen this yet, David? This is the first time you've seen it? Oh man, it's so awesome. So actually, the person who actually ended up designing this was our one and only Tabitha, who often moderates our channel, and you'll see her around Agora.Community a lot on the Discord and stuff. And so she put together this really awesome like bingo, sort of design, which and a bingo design, which incorporates a lot of the fun things that happen during those anim bingos. But there's a little extra bonus here on the side, which I think is really hilarious. This little arm decoration here, which is kind of sums up, I think, the iconic moment that everyone seems to remember from that is when, it was me and the Pratt brothers on one of the streams. I can't hold it properly. I'm all backwards. Oh, there we go. Me and the Pratt brothers ended up, I was learning how to dab for the first time. So it actually became like an emoji for our Discord server. So there's me dabbing on the shoulder. So if you want your very own, we're gonna see if we can actually make these shirts available for people who just want to order one for themselves. If you wanted to sort of help the Agora community channel and also just feel like, just having a cool shirt that represents the sort of the community movement that we're trying to make happen over here. We'll try to make that public available and have that set up for you at some point. So so hopefully there's something special for you crab nuts, by the way. So when you get yours, I would love to maybe get a photo or something like that so people can see what that little surprise is. I'm not going to reveal it. I think it's special. I want you to be the first one to see it for yourself. Okay, so and the reason, by the way, that Crab Nuts has something special is because, well, he's become kind of a character in himself, but also because he's been participating a lot, and we want to recognize him for that. And probably most importantly and more relevantly, he won more times we thought were humanly possible. In those, he showed up to most of the Anim Bingo nights, and he won pretty much every single time he showed up. I don't know how. I don't even understand. So we made him a special shirt to represent that phenom like animation bingo ability. Okay, so that's it for me. I'm going to sign off. Stay animated, and thank you for being part of the community. Cheers.
Good.